Just know that they're not public discussions. We really want to have our hopes met by seeing these discussions take place in public, which is one of the reasons we're calling for it.
And also, I mean, we've seen the governor go around the state advocating for very good policy, depending on where you stand, but very good policy discussions. What we have not heard on that tour around the state is any mention of the need for and the importance of getting ethics done within this negotiated budget session.
To that point, I think it was
one quick thing. I mean, part of the problem is when they hammer these deals out behind closed doors, no one gets a chance to review the language until they're voting on it. Right? And so we've seen things like a public financing system that goes into effect in 6 months, which was really designed to fail. And so part of it is that. If you have those discussions in the open, we can come up with better laws. Sorry, Casey.
And it's happened with other pieces of legislation, such as the SAFE Act, right? And so, the public not just benefits knowing what's happening, but laws are written in a way that they can enforce and make sense. Let me just say, too, and to further answer your question, the governor has done more than anyone else on this issue of all the leaders that we have here in Albany. But none of them have done as much as is needed because we don't have yet a viable law that is strong enough to prevent corruption here in our state capital.
In response,
What do you conclude from that? What's the reason?
Albany is just enmeshed with money. And our reforms, there are a number of reforms proposals out there from the good government groups, from some legislative leaders, from the governor himself. They all deal centrally with the issue of how money corrupts our process. If you only take a look at the convictions of Skelos and Silver, they had to deal with money, with using their public posts for private gain. Silver more for himself, Skelos for his family. When you're dealing with money, it's very difficult to get the hands away from the cash. And that's what these ethics laws need to do if we are going to solve this problem.
You talked about preventing corruption from happening, not reacting to it. We've heard the governor say a number of times, well, I don't know how you can stop bad people from doing bad things. What's your response to that?
Just when there is so much money awash in our political system here in Albany, it is designed for corruption. Let's just take, if we wanted to design the perfect system for corruption as it relates to legislative compensation, we have it. We pay our legislators too little. We haven't given them a raise in, 18 years. The last time they got a raise was the result of a political deal setting the stage for any future raise to be tied to a political deal. We solved that problem last year, we hope, with the Quadrennial Commission. We have, no oversight until last year of the per diem expense reimbursement, and we have a campaign finance system that allows them to hold fundraisers for campaigns where they face no competition, and they're allowed to use that money to help, allowed to use that money for personal use in the fulfillment of their duties, which is broadly defined. And so we have created a system where, and they are allowed to earn as much money outside. So if you take a look at the system we've designed for just legislative compensation alone, it's prone for corruption. What does all this have to do? It's with money. We need to take money out of the system if we're going to finally deal with corruption. That's how you prevent corruption.
Let me just add one thing on that. Under the theory that there's always going to be bad people, therefore you don't need laws, then you wouldn't need laws for anything, right? The whole argument really doesn't hold together when you think about it. You have to have clear standards for what's right and wrong. You have to have basically an ethics police force that's independent and cracks down on wrongdoers. Right now, that person's been pre parara. If it wasn't for the U.S. Attorney's Office, we wouldn't be standing there here probably having this conversation. Independent enforcement matters a lot.
a week and a half ago, the governor was asked why he wasn't doing anything even close to the bus tour or the statewide addresses on ethics reform. He was responding to Blair's cricket sounds point, and what he said was, it's silly to try and pit these issues one against the other. What's your response?
Well, all we're asking is for an open leaders meeting on ethics because that's the way we think a better deal will get done. We've been down this road. This is a well-trod path of secret negotiations around ethics with an unsatisfying resolution. Let's try openness.
Isn't it clear that they're just trying to run out the clock here?
Well, I don't know what's clear. It's March. Since they don't tell us what's going on, everything's sort of being conducted behind closed doors. It's hard to evaluate where things are at. But we'll see. I mean, we'll know by April 1st what happened.
Yeah, but you've been talking about the Watergate moment. It seems like it's become an hour, a day, a week, a month. I mean,
A decade,
well,
3 decades.
but the point is, public rage is going to dissipate. So,
Well, I mean,
how do you guys deal with
look, that's a cynical analysis that the public at some point is not going to care anymore. We send elected officials to capitals to solve problems. That's their job. And this is as big a problem as one can find, where the public's basic trust in its own government has been so eroded that 90% of New Yorkers believe that ethics in Albany is a problem. What could be a bigger problem than that? Do their job and solve the problem.
Can you imagine if there was another issue out there in the public domain where 90% of New Yorkers supported action on it and they didn't act on it? There would be outrage. I think that we are beginning to see the kind of outrage that will not dissipate if nothing is done here along the lines that need to be done. There are opportunities that are coming down the pike. There's a constitutional convention question in 2017. The public is not going to sit down and stand by waiting for our elected officials to act. They have a perfect opportunity in the next couple of weeks during this March Madness, as it's known here in Albany, to get this done. And we hope that they will see this opportunity, because if not, I think there will be other ways in which New Yorkers will take steps to change the leadership here in Albany, so that we do have the kind of to change the leadership and the issues, so that we do have the kind of responsible, effective government we deserve.
And this isn't rocket science. I mean, we know how to do this. We've given them recommendations after recommendations all around this single issue that the three of us have been doing for decades now. So it's not as if they don't know how to do this. They do know how to do it. It is the political will that they lack, because this, and I've said this for decades, the status quo works for every single one of them, whether it's the executive or the legislature in mass. It works for them. Why would they want to change the environment that they have done so well in? I mean, when you talk about personal use of campaign finance money, that's a perk to their salaries. They consider, whether it's the Super Bowl or the Yankee Stadium or hockey games or parties or jaunts, they consider this to be part of what is, they think a lesser salary than they deserve. So the negotiations on personal use of campaign dollars falls off the table almost immediately in any negotiation. Well, don't you think it would be interesting to hear somebody say, well, I think I deserve that? In an open negotiation, what do you suppose the public would think about that? So we get why it is they haven't done this. But we also get that 90% of people want it done, and that now is the time to actually open this process up and do the will of the people. I mean, it's just not that difficult.
It's a
Can
sad
you describe what that would
other
look like? I mean, would there be a meeting in the Red Room? Who would attend? I mean,
Well,
who would
we've
be able
had
to-
open leaders meetings before. Some people think they're sham theater, whatever, but it would. It would be a meeting in the Red Room where the leadership and maybe some of their top negotiators, councils, etc., would sit down with the governor's people around a U-shaped conference table and exchange ideas and say, well, we think maybe we could do this. Maybe it would be better if we did this. And maybe somebody would say, gee, I think we have data out of the legislative, the state's legislative agendas that other states have done. Maybe that would work here. The people of New York would think that was very refreshing, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that it benefits the status quo by keeping these negotiations behind closed doors. And so for anyone not to come out in response to our letter and call for a public leaders meeting, they are essentially saying that we like the system as it is and it does not need to change, because they will not address the public's need to know what is being done publicly about this issue.
Have you guys proposed this to the leadership?
Yes.
Yes.
In a letter, how long ago?
This
Was the
morning.
letter?
This morning.
Well, but we have made other overtures to do this.
What's been their response?
We don't know this one.
We sent the letter this morning. We'll see how they respond. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Well, they'll argue that you guys also participate in these closed-door negotiations. Was that a negotiation, or was it proposing the idea?
Well, look, we will meet with anyone, anywhere to discuss ideas on how to fix Albany. I mean, that's the sort of the bottom line with us. But at the end of the day, it's the elected officials that have to do the people's work. They have to deal with solving problems. And as I mentioned before, this is a big deal. This is a big problem when when the legislative leaders get hauled off to prison. That should be at the top of the legislator in the governor's list.
Governor Blair Nyberg
Maybe.
and,
Gee, wouldn't that be?
and Common Cause and Citizen Action as well.
Union.
Instituted Clean Conscience Pledge.
Yes, it was citizenship.
Yeah, the citizens. Okay.
And Common
How many lawmakers have signed a bill?
I don't know the answer.
And increasing.
I think it's around
Close-
30.
No, it's more than that. No,
Okay.
and there's been a sizable increase over the last couple of weeks. We will get that answer to you. I don't want to say something that is not correct, but Common Cause has been keeping track of that, and we don't have the exact number, so let me get that to you.
It's on their
soon.
website.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
The leaders of